I'd like to move on from what I was talking about last time to a brief discussion about the relationship between openness and mental health or well-being. And this follows on very neatly from the last topic of conversation, even though it may not immediately appear to follow on. And the thing about openness, just to start off with, is that we all think it's a good thing on the whole, and we all imagine ourselves to be open-minded, in favour of openness, not just in terms of being open-minded, but openness in general. And this is not at all true. It's very far from being true. Quite the contrary is true. We have a deep and abiding love of closed situations, and we create closed situations for ourselves all the time. So no matter what else we may say we value or think to be good, whatever it is, happiness, freedom, creativity, compassion, whatever, all these good things, all of that comes second to our need to create and maintain closed situations. That trumps everything. And we will deny that it does, because we're normally able to put on this pretense that we value the other things more than being closed. And we'll actually say we don't value being closed at all. But when push comes to shove, we'll always find out where our allegiance lies, despite what we may like to think to the contrary. And the reason for this is that openness, even though it might sound nice and it might sound good to be open-minded, who on earth wants to be closed-minded anyway? Who would want to admit to it or to perceive themselves to have a closed mind? No one would want to do that. Even the most bigoted, prejudicial, narrow person in the world would not go around thinking of themselves as having a closed mind. But openness isn't a nice fluffy thing. It's the most terrifying thing there is. It is the source of all terror, the source of all ontological terror. It's the big bad bogeyman, which is strange. Why should openness be so terrifying to us? If we have any psychological insight, we'd probably say, yeah, I can see why openness would be terrifying. But assuming that we don't, just to go through it from scratch, openness, the situation of being open, is terrifying because it's not possible to have any final descriptions of the world or of ourselves. It's not possible to have any final descriptions of anything, any final words, any words that are actually literally true. So the very notion of literal truth becomes a nonsense, a contradiction. We can only live in a world of literal truths within the context of a closed situation that we have created, because within that context we can safely have a final description of things. We can say what they are and they will always be that, and there's no contradiction. But in openness we can't do that. And the reason is that, fairly clearly, if our situation is open, then there isn't a limited amount of perspective, there's an infinite amount of perspective. So no matter what I may see to be the case, give me a little bit more perspective and I'll see, well, it isn't really the case, it just looked like that from where I was standing. So openness, if we say it's infinite perspective with no end, no limitations, is exactly this. No matter what way we might see things to be, or say that they are, our descriptions will always be infallibly falsified, if we're willing to let them be falsified, if we're willing to take another look, if we're willing to examine a bit more closely. So whatever we examine in the open universe turns out to be other than what we took it to be. There's no open means there's no final form, there's no final version of things. And our entire language, as Robert Anton Wilson says, is based upon finalities, final descriptions. This is it. The word is itself a finality. It is. It just is. Okay. It is. This is this is this. This is that. Is a static fixture. So in an open universe there is no is. Which is something that Robert Anton Wilson talks about, and he talks about this language E prime, which I think it was put together by Korzybski, but I'm not sure. But E prime is English with no is in it. So if we were to try to talk for a while without having the is word, we'd find out how difficult that is. Everything is based on is, and yet there is no is. Even though if I say that, I'm actually saying something definite. So there's no ground to walk on. There's no terra firma. There's no platform. There's no fixed basis. And we operate by assuming that there is a fixed basis. The thinking mind always works to produce a fixed basis, because the thinking mind always has to take categories for granted. So this is our starting off point. So it's categorically based. So the thinking mind always has final descriptions. It creates literal truths, literal realities. But it only does that because it assumes that there's nothing more to learn. It assumes that there's no more perspective than the perspective. It has to assume that to get started on its journey. So the journey starts off with assuming that this is basically true, and you build on it and you extrapolate it and you carry on that basis and see where you get. But unless you start with that basis, that this is definitely true, this is axiomatically true, there's no where for us to go. We can never have any thoughts. One thought is piggybacking on the back of another thought, on another thought, on another thought, and they're all based on this platform, this basis of definite truths. So take that away, the whole thing collapses. So our thoughts are no good for us because thoughts are always literal. So the entire structure of thought becomes redundant, becomes useless, becomes false. Visibly false. It's always false, but it becomes visibly false. So straight away, there's this awareness that everything I've ever thought is wrong. Not wrong in the sense that, well, it's a bit inaccurate and I can correct it. Wrong in the sense that it's completely wrong. It's missed the point by a mile. It couldn't have missed the point by... It's not even wrong. It's just completely, absurdly irrelevant as far as reality is concerned. And that's a kind of a big deal, really, obviously enough, because our entire worlds are made of thought. So there is the world, but then there's what we think about the world, and we don't relate to the world as it is in itself. We relate to what we think about the world, to our thoughts of the world, our descriptions of the world. So we live within our own final descriptions of something that isn't final and can never be described. So there's the disorientation of losing our way of navigating, losing our way of understanding. Which way is up? Which way is up? Can someone please tell me which way is up and which way is whatever? Do you know, that's gone. Orientation is gone. So there's that total shock of having no way of orientating ourselves. And there's something else as well, because chief amongst our fixed values, our fixed meanings, our fixed or final descriptions, chief amongst them is the self. The self is always a final description. You can't have a non-final self. And so the self is an artifact of us pretending that there is nothing more that we can learn that's going to be radically different. The self is a result of our closed mind. The self can only live, thrive, persist in a closed mind. If we were to take away the closed mind, which is the only type of all minds are closed, all thought is closed, otherwise it can't be thought, as I said earlier. So we take away thought. And then, so I look at what I thought was me, but because of all the extra perspective, because I can continually see everything in a new way, I don't have to be stuck in what I thought was the case. So, well, I thought that was me, but it isn't. So, in an open universe, we can't say what we are, because whatever we say we are is open to radical revision. And if you radically revise something, then definitely it's not going to be what you thought it was. It's not even going to be close. It's not even going to be remotely close. So you might have thought it was a turkey, but actually it's an elephant. But even more so than that, you might have thought it was a teapot, but actually it's a combine harvester, it's an ocean liner, something like that. It's absolutely different to what we thought it was. So what happens when we radically revise our understanding of who we are? What happens is that we can't identify with that notion anymore. That isn't who we are. It isn't who we now perceive ourselves to be. So that basis that I'm operating out of, the basis of me, no longer exists. I'm still operating. I'm still alive. I'm still breathing, walking around the place, doing stuff, whatever stuff. But there's no me. So just to reflect on that, how the hell that so undermines our entire way of looking at things, our entire way of living that we've always had, apart from when we were really small and too young to be thinking about it and too young to create the superstructure of thought. But other than that, we have always lived on the basis of me, of a me. And so to take that away, we don't recognize anything. We don't know what to do with anything. If I do everything for the sake of me or for the benefit of me, which is what me means, when I'm a me, I'm doing everything for the benefit of me, from the viewpoint of me, and for the sake of me, because that's the center, that's the basis for everything. Take that away, and it's as if there's nothing there that I can recognize. There's nothing there that I can utilize, or put to. I don't know what to do with stuff, because everything I ever did was for the sake of me. Pretty much. So to say that this is a shock to the system is really underselling things. It is, in pragmatic terms, impossible for me, if I'm habituated living as me, is to carry on, because I can carry on doing the same things. I can still drink a glass of water. I can walk down the street. I can say, how are you? I know there's an implication there that the other person is a me and that there's a me saying it, but I can still say that in a general kind of a way. But without a me. So the universe still exists without a me. The universe isn't dependent upon a me or addicted to seeing things in this way. The universe, obviously, it just works very very well, fine. It works in an absolutely fine and dandy way. Without the need for a me, everything happens. Everything happens, and it just happens because it happens, not because of a me. So that's fine for the universe, but we're not talking about the universe. We're talking about our particular modality of existing or being in the universe, which is me-based. So although the universe is quite fine with there being no me, because there never was anyway, really, we're not. It is absolutely, the prospect of losing the me is absolutely terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing there is. It's not that there's nothing there, it's just that we have no reference point to refer it to. You can't make sense of it, because how we make sense of things is by referring it to a reference point. The reference point is bullshit, but we don't look at that because we really need for it not to be bullshit, and we really need for the information that we get by the referral, the act of referral, to be meaningful to us, because that's what creates our world, and that's what thought is. Thought is a constant comparing of incoming data with our yardstick, with our reference point, with our framework. And thought works because we never question the framework, we never question the reference point, we never question the basis. So thought works, and the things it says are sound, solid. But thought only works because we never examine what all the data, all the incoming information is being referred to in order to make sense of it. The moment we did that, it would disappear in a puff of smoke. And thought wouldn't work. Number one, thought wouldn't work. Number two, there'd be no more me, because me is a construct of thought and nothing else. It's not an intrinsically existing entity or aspect of the universe. So to see that there is no me takes the wind out of my sails in a big way, because everything, I know I'm repeating myself here, everything I ever did was for the sake of me, and there isn't a me, which is kind of quoting Wei Wu Wei. So this puts me in a very awkward situation. It doesn't have to. If I wasn't so addicted to the reference point, if I wasn't so habituated to it, dependent upon it, I'd be fine. But if you've got a massive addiction, a massive dependency like this, you don't get rid of it like that and just kind of sail off happily. We know that. Anyone who's had experience of major addiction and has acknowledged that they have a major addiction knows you don't just snap your fingers and move on from it and say, I don't need that anymore. That doesn't happen. It's a slow, painful process. And the biggest addiction of them all, the king addiction, the mother of all addictions, the father of all addictions, the archetypal addiction, something to do with coke or crack or shopping or smack or opium or methadone. It's this thing we've created, which is the me, which we've created by having a reference point which we never examine. It's the biggest addiction. Makes all other addictions look silly in comparison, lightweight in comparison. So just to make the point that we really don't like openness as much as we say we do. We like the idea of openness. We like the idea that we like openness. We like that idea a lot, and we kind of live with that idea. We live with that narrative that we're open-minded and we like openness. Whereas in actuality, absolute reverse is true. We are very good at creating closed situations for ourselves. We do it all the time. That's what beliefs do. That's what theories do. That's what having opinions does. That's what thinking does. So every time we think about the world, we create a closed situation for ourselves and we live in it. And we go on about, is this the right way? Is this the right theory? Have I got a better theory? It doesn't matter what theory we have. All theories, models, hypotheses, concepts, paradigms, whatever, all of them are closed universes. And in the open universe, that we can't get away with having a theory, because we realize that our theory will be revealed to be utterly absurd and irrelevant just as soon as we get a bit more perspective on it. There can't be a theory for anything in an open universe. There can't be a theory for what we see. There can't be a theory for who we are or what we're about. There can't be anything. There can't be a thought. Thoughts are judgments, as Eckhart Tolle says. If I think something, I've just made a judgment. Yep. This is this, that is that. I live on that basis. There's no thoughts. Well, there can be thoughts, but we can't believe in them. We'll see straight through them. There's no meaningful thoughts. There's no valid thoughts in an open universe. This naturally sounds fairly disconcerting. We could say, well, what is there then if there's no possibility for a thought of anything or judgment of anything or opinion or belief or theory? But there we are again, coming in with our is word. What is? What is? What is it? What is it? What is in the open universe? We don't get it. There's no is in the open universe. There's no is in an open situation. And we really don't get that.